Hello everyone, a very good evening to everyone who's joining us live. I welcome all of you to the Slim Brand Summit 2021. Exploring the transformative power of brands and digital strategy in a dynamic world. This is a live panel discussion organized by Lanka Institute of Marketing. My name is Ashinsanie Weerasinghe and I'm the moderator for this session. Now to get started, let me give you a small introduction about SLIM. Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing is the apex body for Sri Lankan marketers. With their vision of leading the nation's efforts towards economic prosperity, they are mandated to uplift the marketing profession in Sri Lanka. Thus, they've been conducting marketing studies and many other national level events throughout. However, due to this COVID-19 global pandemic situation, all events took a whole new turn coming into the virtual world. And during the past couple of months, the virtual events conducted by SLIM have been a great success, so we hope today's event will also be one such event. Along with that, coming into the SLIM Brand Summit 2021, the objective of today's panel discussion is to uplift the marketing profession in Sri Lanka through creating awareness on the field of branding. And I shouldn't forget to mention about our sponsors this evening. As the media partner, we have Pulse, and as the PR partner, we have Good PR. As the hospitality partner, we have Taj Samudra Colombo. With that, without further ado, let me introduce the speaker panel to all of you this evening. First of all, at my right further end, let me start with the Senior Brand Manager, Lifebuoy Uniliver, Mr. Chetaka Gunawardena. Good evening to you, Chetaka. He will be covering the brand aspect from the FMCG industry. And then let me introduce the Head of Corporate Communications and Branding, MAS Holdings, Mr. Surein Wijeyeratne. Good evening to you, Surein. And he will be covering the brand aspect from the apparel industry. And next, let me introduce Head of Brand Strategy and Corporate Communications, Bharti, Airtel, Lanka, Mr. Charith De Chickera. Good evening to you, Charith.
Hello. Looking forward to this evening.
Definitely. And he'll be covering from the telco industry. Last but not least, let me introduce CEO and Digital Architect at 7 Media Group, Mr. Subodha Pilimatalawwe. Good evening to you, Subodha.
Good evening.
And he will be covering the digital marketing aspect through branding. So, while welcoming all our panelists this evening, I would also like to remind you that apart from the discussion we are carrying forward this evening, you also have the opportunity to send us questions through the link that you will see right now in the chat box. Our organizing committee will be putting a link. So if you have any questions as and when we are having the discussion, please send us your questions. We will have them at the end session. With that, to get started with, I would like to start with Chetaka. So let's get started with the FMCG industry in Sri Lanka. So let's talk about the emerging trends in the new normal post this COVID-19 global pandemic situation in the FMCG industry.
In that light. So what we see there is that there is uncertainty, financial insecurity, but people might slightly stack up more, but they will seek value in everything. So which puts pressure on the marketeers' bottom line. So, and if marketeers need to kind of drive volume, they need to give them more value solutions. And we see that people want more physical and mental well-being in their products. That's important. And they want natural-based solutions. And we see there is kind of a connectivity with the nature and the community, which is coming from post-lockdown, which we see. And they trust on science and scientists. It's not that they don't trust, but there is a trend going back to their roots and kind of trusting on the things that has been trusted over generations, which they feel it's to be more safer. And lastly, one clear trend is they go buy local, and there is kind of nationalistic pride. And the way that this is happening is because they believe when you kind of buy local, that kind of gives, that helps to develop the Sri Lankan economy. So these are few kind of trends that are there that is happening in the FMCG sector.
Interesting to know. With that, I would like to move into the telco industry, Charith. Now, I would like to specifically focus about the teaser video you've spoken, where the rise of millennials and their mistrust in advertising, and also the dwindling influence celebrity endorsements have on them. How do you really market to them?
So like I said, it's one of the best times to be a marketer. but you really have to understand millennials. 90% of millennials say that authenticity is their prime currency. If you're not authentic, you're not in their consideration set. They also say that 40% of millennials say that user-generated content grabs their attention as opposed to content generated from what they deem as advertisers. So this puts a lot of pressure on marketers to really understand this new, not really new, but this new animal that they have to market to. Using lingo, you have to speak their language. And just last week I had, I think, a fabulous encounter which just emphasized and personified this whole thing. So we did a teaser video for Slim. All of us kind of were part of it. And sometime in the evening I was sent the video. I had a look at it, and all of us were feeling pretty intellectual about it. And I couldn't wait to show my kids. So they walked in the evening, and I showed them the video. First thing they said was, Tati, you're in a suit. I said, yeah, I can wear things other than t-shirts and shorts. And then they watched the whole video. I had a bit of a spiel at the end. And both of them instantaneously said, that was so cringe. And I was just like, what do you mean? And he said, only boomers refer to themselves as baby boomers. The right term is boomer, not baby. Don't ever say that again. And it just struck me, I'm in the middle of this whole thing, understanding. It's my job to understand this target audience and try to connect with them. And the first realization was, look, I am so far away from this target audience. It's shocking, right? And the other thing was this innate need for them not to be identified with a boomer or a Gen X. We are millennials, we are Y, and we're Z, and we'd like to be identified as that. So the language you speak to them is really important. I think when we've done research on different creatives, when they feel you're talking their language, it gives them a sense of comfort and a sense of trust. Some other interesting things are that millennials love, when brands collaborate with each other. Collaborations are a massive hit when brands collaborate and when they get to collaborate in the product development process. I don't know if you saw it, there was a really innovative collaboration between Tinder and Ford recently, where Ford Mustang actually put out a promotion on that, and Tinder's the dating app, and they gave away 5 Ford Mustangs to the audience, and it happened to reach 1.5 million people in terms of getting an engagement. So it was really taken up by this audience. Ford Mustang was primarily looking at a new segment to go into. So brand collaborations is something else. So it's an interesting development that's been happening and keeps you on your toes and keeps the job really interesting, in my opinion.
On that note, I would like to ask the rest of the speakers, what are your opinions about this? Marketing into the millennials.
So I think especially on the FMCG, it's quite challenging because with millennials coming in, their attention spans are kind of shrinking because there are multiple screens that they kind of focus on, and they want authenticity. And the most important thing is, if you look at the way kind of generally they behave, is that there is automatic triggers. If it's something like advertising, they just switch off. So you need to be kind of authentic, drive the brand purpose, and make sure that you build memories and be emotional with the pieces that you do. So that's something that we kind of, with the millennials, have changed across the FMCG sector.
I think another thumb rule for me, and what is pretty important, is they can really suss out whether you're being fake or whether you're being honest. And advertising that's about the company and about the company's objectives or about their wallet is immediately rejected. You have to show how you're going to bring purpose to their life, how you're going to improve their life, or else it's immediately discarded. So that's a massive change in the way advertisers and marketers have to really look at brand influence and things like that.
All right. Next, I would like to move into Surein. What is the importance of a global B2B apparel brand?
I think just to build upon what was just talked about also,
Sure.
because globally what we see is with the new generations that are there, just to Charith's point also, people are looking for different values that are congruent with themselves. They will not engage with a brand or an organization, whether it is one of the largest and most valuable brands, even if they don't see themselves inside that brand and those values that the brand is articulating, they will refuse to engage with it. So globally for us, what we've seen is, I mean, in the good old days, we talked about consumers, the supposed green consumers, we used to refer to them as watermelon consumers. They were green on the outside, they talked about it, but on the inside, you know what, they were not willing to pay. But today's consumers are different, especially the younger generation is willing to actively work against your brand if they don't see some level of genuineness, a level of values that they believe in. And there are things that are there now that are important to them. So for example, the environment. It's a big problem in the apparel industry, because we know that apparel is a problem in terms of its sustainability. And there are enough of movements out there now that are affecting the apparel industry that are driven by consumers. Consumers will now actively look for brands and other solutions that they are happy to be associated with, that they are happy to promote themselves because they believe in those values. Yeah. And as a result, most global brands, as well as the apparel companies who actually are part of their supply chains, have long since pivoted in that direction and made that change towards being more sustainable and having more practices and kind of processes involved in actually actively reducing, whether it's your carbon footprint, whether it's your emissions footprint, to be able to support brands in their journey. And that is driven essentially by consumer behavior. So if you have not kind of, as an organization, already kind of taken that switch and moved into work that is empowering the society around you, or actually actively protecting your environment, or actually regenerating it, then you're probably too little too late already. So that is something that across the globe, regardless of whether it is a large FMCG brand, you just need one or two consumers now to start talking about something that your brand is not doing properly for it to blow out into a movement. Yeah. I mean, if you were let's take a beverage brand, all you need is a few people to talk about the fact that maybe you're not using the groundwater responsibly, and that can actually actively snowball into a movement against your brand. And it's the same in Sri Lanka as well. So that kind of activism that is there now is at a militant level. You know, people will come against you if they don't see you as being an epitome of good values that they are happy to be associated with.
On that note, does a B2B apparel manufacturer need a brand voice?
Of course, because if you are not, I mean, typically what is a brand, right? All the marketers know what a brand is. A brand is a way to identify product, service, organization with an associated set of values. So if you don't have those values that you can associate with your brand or your corporate image, then there is nothing to give the consumer or your customer a reason to come to you. Because today, globally, organizations are being more and more conscious and careful about the way they set up their supply chains. They do not want to engage with organizations that they would have in the past. But today, the level of transparency that is there and visibility that social media and the kind of internet has brought about, you want to ensure your own brand is protected, and therefore your supply chain, the integrity of your supply chain is not harmed by anybody that you're working with. So having a brand that has an articulated set of values that is congruent with consumers as well as your customer brand is absolutely critical.
Since you mentioned about staying true to your values, the core values of branding, how do you stay into the roots during a situation like a pandemic situation, like COVID-19 pandemic situation? How important is it to stick to the brand values of a company?
This is a rapid fire questions at me.
No, sir, I'm just trying to get the...
I'm glad I'm sitting on this side of the table.
All right. So I think clarity is very important, because if as an organization you are not clear as to what those values are, you can't hold true to them. And crises of this nature, and of course nobody has seen the likes of what happened with COVID-19 globally before, but if you are not clear about what those values are, you will be spontaneously kind of rejected because you're unable to defend that position. So every decision that your company makes, whether it is in terms of employees, product, process, everything has to be driven by those core values. Otherwise, you don't have a rule book to play by. right? When you're forced to make kind of very serious decisions on a day in and day out basis, which the pandemic forced everybody to do. If you don't have something, I call it a North Star, call it a set of values, call it guiding principles that you are clear about as an organization, as leadership, then you will start floundering. Your decisions don't have a basis on which to operate. And once they are based on those set of values, you find that there's nobody in your organization who will question those, right? Because you got a very clear sense of purpose and the reason why you are doing something the way you do it.
So I'd just like to add to that. I think diversity and this pandemic is possibly one of the biggest challenges the world has, is a brilliant opportunity for brands to actually walk the walk. You come out and you say your purpose, you spend a lot of money communicating what it is, but then when there is adversity, right, you can't be seen as not walking the talk. And I think in Sri Lanka, for example, it was a great example. There were some brands who really did walk the talk during the pandemic, and you find when they came out of it, they really paid dividends. Market share increased, brand loyalty increased, stuff like that. So it's not just words. It should never be a plaque on the boardroom or something you use to in your PR spiel. I think adversity and stuff like what we are having right now is one of the best opportunities for brands to actually come out there and walk the walk.
Thank you so much for that answer. Chetaka, do you have anything about
Yeah, I
values?
think one thing is because I handled a brand that was quite in the spotlight with the pandemic. Lifebuoy, of course, had the chance of kind of bringing purpose to life, and which we have been doing. In 1894, the brand was created by William Lever to counter cholera, and likewise, after many years with the pandemic, like we had the chance of bringing our purpose to life, which we have been doing constantly. So, like making sure that there is hygiene facilities, talking about the right behaviors, and also going to schools, making sure that the students are aware of this. So that this is what the brands should be doing. Like you do kind of drive your purpose, not only the brand say, but also bring in brand do. So these two things, and I think pandemic has given that opportunity to all like brands. Yeah.
I think that's where we said COVID-19 gave an opportunity. In place of a crisis, it was also an opportunity for all brands to come up in different ways. Along with that, now let's move into the digital marketing aspect. To Subodha, why is digital marketing essential for brand building? And let's talk about how online marketing influences this.
Okay, so before I answer that question, I would like to say hello to everyone who's connecting online, because I think we are just having a good time and not even realizing you guys are there. So I'm just going to throw a question at you. I hope we have a system where they can message us. So the question that you're asking me is branding and what sort of role it plays on digital. Why is it important to brand online? So all of you who's connecting with us, Slim students, everyone who's from the fraternity, just a question, please use the chat box and message us. Why do you need a brand? Why does an organization or an individual need a brand? Or why do you need to do brand communications? So because we can't wait for long, I'll answer it myself. It's because you have a brand or you do brand communication to give a unique identity to what or who you are, and to create a perception in the mind of the consumer. And by creating that perception or continuously evolving in that perception, you build a relationship. So it's easier for a consumer to build a relationship with an entity that has an identity, and that identity is the brand that you create. So while you're answering, I hope all of you were right. I trust that you're much more conversant in this piece than I am. So to give an example, if let's say that you have a product and you're a brand custodian and your product is equipment for farmers. And let's say it's grassroots level equipment, it's for rural farmers, small to medium, not even medium and small. And now when you're thinking of building your brand and positioning your brand and doing your brand communication, if you put your communication or brand on the in-flight magazine, chances are your target audience or where you're trying to build your brand equity is not going to see it. So you can't communicate and your target audience not see it. So I think all of us spoke about the pandemic and the shift and the new norm and how digital has just evolved. So if your consumer, most businesses, your consumer has made that shift. So they're on digital. Even your auntie or uncle who never used WhatsApp is now calling you on Zoom, right? They're sending not only the funny little meme with the cat, but they're videoing something in their house and sending it to you upside down. So,
How do I click on this link?
yeah. So you're sort of that tech guru, tech help as well. So if your consumer is on digital and you know you need to build a brand, it goes without saying it's a no-brainer that you need to build your brand on digital. And to just bounce off what my panelists were saying, so we have this notion of Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, the millennials, the digital darlings, whatnot. It's very important to understand that there's also a new dynamic that's evolving, which is your millennial who's thinking, acting, behaving Gen Z. Now, if you go to TikTok, which is the best platform to be on right now, because it's organic, it's the advertising part hasn't kicked into countries like Sri Lanka, so you can get crazy organic reach. If you go to TikTok, you'll see a lot of millennials on it. You might even see some boomers on it, right? So choose your channels. Don't do this sort of one-size-fits-all sort of approach. Airtel does a good job, I think, in how they generate content. He said he'll give me the account, so I have to give a small little endorsement to Airtel.
Yeah, that was an endorsement.
I'm just kidding. So that's my long answer to your short question.
I think digital marketing is an interesting topic to talk about. I would like to get your views as well coming from different industries. Charith?
I think we're in a state now where we can actually drop the word digital when we talk about marketing. It really is now how you play this game. Well, I think one of the opportunities digital gives you, and which is, I think, just to preempt one of the questions we have in line, is its ability to micro-target to people. As we said before, millennials, one of the other things about them is they don't like generalized content made for everyone. I want content that's made just for me. Okay, and you have platforms like online. TikTok is a great example. You have so many other contents that gives you the ability to make. So you have essentially one marketing campaign with so many different kinds of communications, tailor-made for different target groups. I used to have a boss at Airtel who used to come around. He was a bit keen on digital marketing and what we do, and so he used to he had a few SIMs, a few phones, and varying levels of usage, and would come and sit on my table and say, Charith, I haven't seen a single advertisement in the last 2 weeks. Good job. Which means he knew. I mean, all the ads and all the spend that we were going is now wasted. And digital really gives you that opportunity. You want to talk to a specific group in their lingo, in the way they want to see it. And like Subodha said, different our audiences consume differently. You'll have possibly the ones like to read stuff. You won't get away with doing anything in print and having long content with the current generation out there. So it's very short content, video kind of audio-video messaging. So that's the flexibility. And the other thing it does, which the other mediums are struggling to, is a two-way communication. So I think consumers can also respond. It's not just organizations spewing out one-way communication, and you take that on board as well. So I think we really should look at marketing now and digital in the forefront of it.
And we used to refer to one of the problems we used to have as brand managers was the marketing director's wife. Right? So if the marketing director's wife didn't like your campaign, that was the opinion of the organization. Right? And it's not necessary anymore, because now you've, like Charith just said, you've got the ability to interact directly with your consumers, and you have almost an instantaneous feedback, and you're not relying on second, third party kind of feedback. Neither are you relying on kind of market research agencies to give that to you as well. So that instantaneity that you have now is a huge advantage.
All right, I would like to move into Chetaka. Is the current FMCG marketing strategies working? Like, are they really working? And would you like to recommend any strategies to build a brand into a brand positioning place?
Yeah, so actually I think I will address it in a different way. I would say what the marketers should be doing in terms of strategizing for marketing.
Yeah, sure.
That's how I would like to approach this, because see, today the dynamics of FMCG is changing. I'm sure a majority of the sectors are changing in terms of the dynamics. So what the marketeers are expected to do is kind of get real, like go to the consumer and understand what their real problems are. Sometimes we are stuck in our offices, we do not kind of really know what's out there, and then start kind of crafting your strategies accordingly, because it's important that the marketeers create an impact, positive impact on people's lives and society, and thrive by driving purpose. So they need to kind of constantly drive positive impact on the environment and society, and break through clutter with the pieces and even on channels, whatever they do, so that there is continuous physical and mental availability. So let me like kind of say the brands are like a leaky bucket, because we need to kind of recruit consumers all the time, because that's how we can kind of grow. So you need to grow penetration. It's not about repeat usage or loyalty, especially in the FMCG sector. More penetration means more growth and more share coming into you. Now, so how would you kind of approach this is by finding out different opportunities for penetration that is out there. So you need to kind of de-average data, uncover the people and their behaviors. Emerging trends and insights is stuff that they need to really go and check. Ask questions. Am I serving all kind of underserved groups in my category? And what are the emerging trends and dynamics in the adjacent categories? So if you are kind of a food brand, it's not just your category, but you need to look at, if you're a snack brand, look at what are the kind of items that people use on meals, how is the restaurants kind of behaving, so likewise, so on. So that's one thing. And the other thing is kind of really understand the real tensions or the pain points of your consumer. Because it's important that you know who your consumer is and what they want to achieve, right? And their frustrations and what their problems and how you can ease it out. Because by doing that, you can kind of innovate and bring products that will really address these tension points, and you future-proof your portfolios. And the most important thing is use purpose, because that will help you kind of do brand engagements when you know what is exactly out there, what are the kind of social tension points that are there, what do really people want. Then you kind of do brand engagements that create credibility that is also relevant to your product. For example, if you look at Drive's Real Beauty, Lifebuoy is about saving lives, Signal is all about protecting, preserving the smile, so on and so forth, right? And then if I go a little bit into detail on purpose, it's important that marketeers ask, what is my brand purpose? Am I driving my purpose to give me growth? So these are kind of fundamental questions that they should be asking, because the marketeers are expected to create positive impact on environment and society, as I mentioned earlier, because purpose is all about that, and motivate the people whom you serve and make it relevant to your product, right? And then bring in purpose to your positioning, make sure that add backs to build your brand equity and your brand power, right? In communication, your purpose should be there. Engagements, be it a BATL activation, the purpose should be there, and that should have a measurable impact, right? Then lastly, it's about 93%, as many people were, like the panelists were saying, 93% of online advertisements go unnoticed, and TV is also the same. It's no exception, right? The attention spans, as I mentioned also earlier, is shrinking. So how do you kind of bring advertising that is not really advertisements and that doesn't drive logic, but it's more of building memories and making yourself emotional, right? And also, it's not only communication. You need to drive this on channel. You need to create that distinction on channel so that there is effortless buying coming from the consumer. That's important, right? And also make sure that you bring in portfolios not just to suit as a blanket across all channels, but kind of craft your products that goes into each channel, which will also kind of create interaction and kind of give a personal touch to the people, especially if you look at e-com or modern trade or so, because the consumers are evolving. So these are few things I think marketeers should look into, especially with this kind of environment that we are operating in.
Thank you so much. That was a very insightful answer, Chetaka. Now, I would like to move into Surein. Since you're coming from a corporate background, what does it feel like being, okay, I'll portray the question in this way. What's the importance of being a corporate brand in times of crisis, and how should one maintain that corporate brand?
I think I'll go back to something I said earlier as well. I think the clarity of your values is absolutely critical. So if as an organization you want to, even in times of crisis, be able to kind of withstand the onslaught that the market is giving you, you need to kind of stay true to the market. I mean, if you look at what happened during the pandemic, there were, especially within the apparel industry, there were kind of three main areas where the industry was getting impacted. So first you had your supply chain problems coming out of the Far East, right? And then suddenly that means you ran short of material and you couldn't produce anything. Then you had the contraction of demand. And so globally apparel stores were closing all over the world, and nobody was selling anything anymore. And the third problem then you had was the lockdown. So you couldn't physically get people to work. So now that created kind of the perfect storm. And the organization then was faced with decision after decision, day in, day out, that actually tested those values. And the fourth, and kind of also sent something specific to Sri Lanka that happened, was the apparel industry unfortunately became demonized as well, right? And there was grassroots level kind of repercussions for people who were involved in the industry because of kind of what happened. So as a result, organizations had to kind of really focus their energies on recovery on a day-to-day basis. You were deciding whether to open, to shut, to close, to move, and each of those had to have an anchor. And we were constantly kind of repeating this mantra over and over to ourselves. It was about protecting lives, right? And then also protecting livelihoods, right? So because it was those two things that was the balance, right? And the kind of primacy or the central importance on the people that we were employing, and therefore kind of ensuring that there was never an instance where their safety was compromised, was kind of a mantra that we kind of stuck by. And as long as you held true to that, then being able to kind of look at everything that was going around and be able to hold your head up was a lot easier, because those values were never once compromised. And I think that's the lesson for everybody, whether you're a brand or you're corporate, is that being true to those values, knowing what they are, right? And like Chetaka said also, what is the purpose of the organization, and that leads into those values. And knowing what they are, and therefore kind of anchoring every decision you make based on those, is absolutely crucial.
Thank you so much for that answer. I would like to move into Charith. Again, talking about something you mentioned in the teaser video, where you talked about the proliferation of media and dwindling consumer attention span. Can you explain this to the public who are watching us right now, and the impact of it on branding?
Sure. So this is a really interesting area. I think scientists have now studied human attention spans over the last decade, and apparently we lose attention spans at the rate of 30% every 5 years. So right now, the human attention span is about 8 seconds. And the attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. So you are now in a situation where you're essentially marketing to goldfish. That is, I think, a pretty good way to frame what we're trying to do here. You also, I think what's also happening is that humans are becoming more forgetful. In the last, I think, some of the research coming out in developed markets is that on average, 35% of people lose or misplace something important once a week. I relate to that personally as well. But we also become very forgetful as a race. The third factor here is that we're really easily distracted. We've got our phones in our pockets, so it's not happening here. But on average, employees look at their screens as much as 1,500 times in a week. That's staggering. So this is the challenge you're up against. And yet, if you look at the number one arsenal at marketers' disposal, still unfortunately, is the 30-second TV commercial. Fundamentally, we need to change from that. And our media plans are all about reach and frequency and creating awareness. I've walked into a lot of meetings where we're discussing digital strategy, and we hear moves like, statements like, I want to increase the fans on my page, I want to have more likes. That's welcome to 5 years ago. It's shifting now into a race of grabbing attention right up front. So in 7 and 8 seconds, or 8 seconds, if you haven't grabbed your target's attention, they've moved on. And we're finding this new generation coming through has no qualms about switching brands like the previous one. They will switch if you give them a good reason to. So it's really a fundamental shift in the way we have to operate. And I think I worked in an agency as well, creative, and when a client comes and gives you a brief, the first thing you do is rush to the creative director and say, okay, what's the TV commercial now? That's exactly the wrong place to start. The place to start is who is our target audience, and then work back from there. So that has repercussions on where you invest your money, what kind of communication, what kind of media strategy. So it's a massive change, and I think as a country, as marketers per se in general, we need to drive this change because we're losing consumers with the country opening up. You're going to have more international brands coming in here, and we need to stay sharp and competitive. So it's a pretty fundamental and a very real shift that a lot of people are struggling to get on board.
Thank you so much for that answer. With that, I would like to move into Subodha. How can one build their personal brand on social media?
Okay, so I'm big on personal brand. I'm trying my level best to build my brand.
Yeah, we know.
And I'm succeeding in some places. I'm struggling in some places. I'll put my hand up. Just yesterday, I put a TikTok post about my weight loss. And I had 3,000 views on this video, and one of my guys who's helping me with the social media said, oh, boss, brilliant post. And around 11 midnight, that's because digital never sleeps. So I also thought, man, I only get about 300 to 3,000. This is the way to go. Then I read some of the things people have said, and I have said I've gone from 230 kilos to 93 kilos, whereas it was 130 kilos. And I was thinking, well, good, people know me now, but for the wrong reason. So when it comes to personal branding, I think the most important thing there is the word personal, not even branding. So even in non-personal branding, even in corporate or branding in general, the most important thing is about building deep personal relationships. So Charith just touched on it. I remember when I got into digital years ago, I think 10 years ago, I used to meet clients and we used to only talk like fan base because their bosses didn't understand it. I think we've had a chat in your office where one of the senior people only wanted to look at fans. And I knew that you knew that was not the way to go, but that's what it was. So the rule of thumb is it doesn't matter how many fans you have or how many followers you have, because the generation who's really active on digital don't have brand loyalty. So they are okay to try a new brand every week. That's why in FMCG, there's Instagram shops working. That's why they will try a new product every week. I mean, there's stats surveys that are coming out post-pandemic to prove that. So when there's no brand loyalty, it's more important for you to have deeper relationships with 1,000 people who will engage with your content than to have 300,000 people who follow you. Because chances are, the algorithms are such, Facebook is a paid media, Instagram is a paid media, Stories is a paid media, YouTube is a paid media. The only non-paid right now that you can really leverage is either Clubhouse or TikTok. So if you're on any of those mediums, then it's all about those relationships. So in personal branding, The most important thing is the word personal, and how you build your brand in a way that you have conversations, how you build deep-rooted relationships, and how you really connect with that audience so that they know your brand and it builds. Just want to leave 3 takeaways. Before I do that, are you like a coffee person or a tea person? Because you asked us a lot of questions. It's our turn now.
Okay, to be honest, I'm more of a coffee person, but I do not know what's the answer you're expecting.
So, Sri Lanka is known for its tea still, right? Apparel, yes. But we're still known for our tea. I just heard that Lipton just is being produced in Sri Lanka again and packaged. Well done to that organization who's doing that. So, the reason I'm talking about tea is not that I'm promoting tea. I'm also a coffee drinker. But because it's easier for you to remember this, I mean, especially for the audience. When you're thinking of building a personal brand, remember tea, the drinking kind, right? So T stands for transparency. So when you're building a personal brand, it's very important that you're very transparent, authentic. People see through fake. So don't fake it. So fake it before you make it is out. You can't do that anymore. You need to be authentic, real. People want to see who you really are, what you stand for. You might have many interests, unlike a brand. We spoke about what a brand stands for. But when it comes to personal branding, try to identify 1 or 2 things, a niche within what you like, and anchor on that. And the E stands for excitement. If no one's engaging with your content, if no one's seeing your content, you're boring. So change. It's a personal brand. You can always try things. You can always evolve. But the main thing is, at least if your mother is not engaging with your content, there's something wrong with your content, right? So make sure that you're exciting. And the A stands for amplification. Just because it's a personal brand doesn't mean you can expect to be the next viral hit. You have to be 1 in a million or a billion to do that. So invest some funds, look at advertising, look at virality, look at hashtags, look at all the techniques that brands use to grow your personal brand. Yeah, so.
Along that line, Subodha, I would also like to ask the question now, when somebody says personal branding, now this is, I think, a misconception where the millennials again come into. Soon as they start building up their personal brand, they get into this influencer market and they want the highest number of followers. They think that's where the personal branding is up there. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so my viewpoint on personal brand is you can't get it wrong. You can't do it twice because one is you can't make a second first impression, right? So you have to get it right. And unlike a brand which can rebrand or change everything and come back out, I think Lifebuoy, if they wanted to, they could change the name and come back out into the market and still keep their revenues up until they figure out a way to bring the original brand back. For any reason, it won't happen. It's a legacy. It's a brilliant brand. You know, well done. But when it comes to a personal brand, it's who you are. And I mean, everyone doesn't want to see everyone dancing on TikTok. Yeah. You know, the brands are not paying big money for influencers. This conception of influencers being a revenue stream is way overrated. Am I right?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, amongst the 4 of us, there's only one of us who has a face on a billboard at the moment. And,
Subodha.
Yeah, and I think that qualifies him to speak on that. But I think I'd just like to add to what he said. You know, one of the ways that I approach or we approach branding is it's actually a collection of all the data you have, an aggregation out there. And what's becoming increasingly difficult is that now there is a massive portion of that data that you can't manage. Mm-hmm. It's organic. What I think about a brand, and I discuss it with you over coffee, is also adding to your brand value because that results in some values, some attributes attributed to your brand. Yeah. And that's something that we need to look at. How do we, I mean, once you put stuff out there, there is a certain element now more than ever that you lose control of what it is. And marketers, I think, traditionally love to control everything about what they say, you know, and everything what consumers say about them as well. So this change is something that we have to be mindful of. It's the same for a personal brand as well. And I think, like you said, you know, you need to be pretty conscious of what you're putting out there, and not just when you want to be. It's something to consider, I think.
Thank you so much. With that, I would like to move into FMCG sector again to Chetaka. Would you like to share some tips to help increase the brand's profitability in FMCG?
Yeah, so I think it's very interesting to see today, because the profitabilities or the bottom lines of companies are kind of getting crunched, right? So how could you kind of bring in profits? Because we see there is recession happening worldwide, and Sri Lanka is also heading towards it. We see the contraction on GDP, the drops in consumption, drops in unemployment, and also depreciation on the currency. And furthermore, we see there is importation bans, and also certain raw material prices are skyrocketing outside in the world. So in this, price plays a big role. So we need to understand in terms of our pricing that different packs has different roles along with different price points. So one kind of pack might bring you accessibility, one might drive profitability. So this is something that the marketeers should start appreciating to ensure that you are right priced. And also understand that our core products, which has a kind of established market share, drives frequency in the category price architecture, and having multiple price points with different packs means that you can kind of target different needs and demand spaces of people, which is kind of bringing you value in kind of the times that we operate in. And also, most importantly, that we also need to look at is that the big brands, because it's like versus the last recession, we saw the big brands kind of bouncing back 9 times faster than the normal brands or the smaller brands. So therefore, but however, you need to kind of invest choicefully. You can't chase behind all ideas that is there, because your cash is limited at this moment of time. And then also look at driving saliency. Make sure that whatever you do gives you more penetration, as I mentioned earlier, and also drive competitive growth. So these things needs to be looked in, and most importantly, whether you're a big brand or a small brand, kind of look at the golden media rules, as I think Charith and the panelists also talking about. It's not just about going behind and investing in TV, but if you're also investing in TV, if that is where your TG is, then check your reach and also look at your SOS, the share of spends and the share of voice, the number of GRPs you are going to get, whether you're spending right or whether you're spending in the right place. Optimize your media, because you don't have money at this moment of time to kind of spend, and then create a balance between your push-pull activities, the consumer activities that you do, and also the trade activities. Look at the ones that will give you high incremental turnover and prioritize it accordingly, right? So that's another thing. And then look at your value chain, which is very important, because cutting on waste will give you more savings. Looking at innovations and making sure that you have the right SKUs is important to drive profitability. And wherever there is kind of opportunity, bring in, localize your RMs and or raw materials and pack mat. And also, if you don't have that opportunity, look at places where you can bring down cheap but sustainable kind of raw materials or pack mat from outside. So these are few things that marketeers could look at to save cash and drive profitability, especially in kind of these times.
Thank you so much. I hope the ones who are watching are taking note of all these tips and knowledge being shared by our experts here today. I would like to move into Surein to talk about your company a bit. How does MAS maintain its brand leadership?
So first and foremost, disclaimer. If you ask 25 people within the organization this exact same question, you get 24 different answers. It's a large organization, obviously, and there's a lot going on. So there is no one right answer for that. But just maybe I'll try and summarize it, and in the spirit of good memory tricks, I'll give you 3 things to kind of remember. One is, as an organization, there has always been foresight. From the leadership downwards, from the founders, there's always been that ability to kind of look to the future and kind of almost see what's coming, right? And that has kind of enabled the organization to kind of go through huge changes in the industry, from the post-quota era to where we are now. Being able to kind of see and understand the way the industry is changing, and to be able to adjust today for what's kind of coming your way tomorrow has been a critical part of MAS's success story. Secondly, there is also a spirit of entrepreneurship that has kind of thrived within the organization. Being able to kind of have different parts of the organization and at different levels as well, take ownership of the opportunities that they see and be able to kind of go out there and kind of capitalize on those for the organization. And obviously it means that you're not going to succeed all the time. You fail fast and you kind of get up and you move on. And I think the third thing has also been that the leadership has never been afraid to invest, right? And kind of reinvest in the organization, and that has enabled the organization to constantly evolve and grow and kind of add different kind of aspects to the business as the global environment changed. Now, where this really suits the marketer and the brand is the fact that when the company is doing all of that, it doesn't mean that you need the spit and polish of the marketing communications to be able to add brand value and build your image. You have an organization that is dynamic and changing and evolving and constantly giving you new facets to your corporate brand. So, I mean, you don't have to say, because it's being done. And what is being done in the organization adds a lot of value, therefore, organically to what you're kind of trying to portray. So the job of the communicator or the job of the marketer is a lot easier, because as a philosophy, you have an organization that is constantly enhancing its own organic value. And to me, that is one of the key components of the success and how it's grown over time.
Okay. With that, I would like to move into Charith. What's your view on the changing composition of marketing teams, and what should organizations really do about it?
So I think I'd like to, there are two parts to that. One is actually the change in dynamic in decision making. Traditionally, the higher up you go in the hierarchy, the ability to make decisions and the decision making power goes up as well. When you get in youngsters into your organizations and millennials and Gen Zs and Gen Xs, they function differently. Fundamentally, they are different. So just to give you a few examples versus boomers and millennials, traditionally boomers look at a secure job in a stable company. The millennials coming out now are more about the work and less so about the organization. They're very much, while you had boomers who want a nice, safe office to come in the morning and work. You have these kids coming up and saying, I can work from a coffee shop, I can work from home. It doesn't matter whether I come at 7 or what time, as long as the work gets done. So there's different mentalities that come in. So needless to say, there is no one rule that will work like in advertising and marketing in terms of managing your marketing teams, or any team for that matter. So there is a level, and actually there are actually 5 generations now in an organization, and 5 different sets of animals that you need to manage and get the best of, right? So when you have a target audience, a representative in your team, it makes that much more easier to work because they are actually living the lives and they can relate to what you're trying to do and bring in insights in a different perspective. So it's important to understand the how to inspire people differently, how to motivate them differently. They may work, in polar opposites to the way you are. So the younger generation coming in are less team-oriented. They like to do tasks on their own. It doesn't mean that they are bad team players, but it's just that they function better this way. You need to recognize that. So change in the way you work, change in the way you put campaigns together. I think leadership needs, and I'm speaking for myself as well, education on how to do this, to manage the different dynamics that occur. The more diverse nature of your team, I think my view has always been the better output and better decisions you make. So a lot of education, a lot of devolution of decision making. We have in Airtel, I mean, my team, I'm very proud to say, representation of all the generations. And there is a culture of, no matter who comes with it, the best idea will prevail. The best solution will prevail. And sometimes it comes from outside your marketing construct. It could come from someone who's not even in your organization. And you have to have a mindset of always being the student, always ready to learn. That's the kind of thing that has worked for us.
Thank you so much for that answer, Charith. Moving into Subodha, how to create a digital marketing strategy focusing on branding?
Okay. I think before I answer your question, if I may, just wanted to add a bit to what Charith said.
Sure.
I think he was spot on with what he was sharing. And one of the challenges I have, Charith, is that during the pandemic, we were working from home. We had people just, the advertising never slept, digital never slept. We accelerated, our business has expanded. And I realized that I became more comfortable working from home. I'm more productive as an individual. That's just the way I realized I was wired. And then so were some of the team members, regardless of the generation that they represented. So now we are going through this sort of phase where we are trying to embrace technology, embrace systems and processes, because that's, I believe, the only way that you can get the best out of the people, because it's no more other 9 to 5s, no more other clock-ins. It's just about the work. We're trying to bring, again, a performance culture into the organization. So it's difficult in agency, marketing, digital environment, but we're trying to bring that in. So if anyone's from a managerial point of view, I think I hope that helps. To answer your question about brand...
digital marketing strategy.
Digital marketing strategy for brands. So I think Charith touched on this. The most important thing is understanding the audience and where they live, what they eat, what they consume. Before you get into anything. I also remember that back in the day, the agency culture was when a client gives you a brief, you'll just go, okay, the first few questions would come from client servicing. Are we going to do radio? Are we going to do TV? Press? Okay, shall we put a bit of digital into it? Facebook? So that used to be what it was. And now, actually, even as an agency at 7 Media, what we do is we take the brief and we just sit down and understand, okay, who are these people that they're trying to speak to? And we actually try to identify individuals who we might know, even in the client's organization, who's, are we targeting a Surein? Or are we not? Then leave him out. Or are we? So we really look at who the audience is, and then we go into their behavior. Where do they live? What digital platforms do they live in? What sort of content do they consume? Because you can have a certain audience who's Gen Z, but example into anime. So they might consume video that is 3 hours long. So it might make sense for you to run YouTube ads for them. So it's very important to identify the audience. Then there are 3 C's that you can remember, like a take-home for the audience. I think the first thing in branding on digital for a brand or a corporate would be the channels. So you have to identify the channels. Once you identify the audience, you identify the channels and what sort of audience that you're going to target on each channel. And perhaps you have a priority list, then you have a nice to have in terms of the channels. Then the next C, I would say, is the content. So again, the content can't be a one size fits all. You can't, back in the day when we would approach a campaign, we'll just come up with either a TVC or even a one line or a radio or a jingle, and then we'll just roll out pieces for the hoarding and whatnot. So you can't do that anymore. You have to really look at each channel, each audience. Even in one channel, you might be targeting different audiences. So you have to create content that is suitable for them. I say a lot of things on social media. So one of the things I used to endorse was dish out an insane amount of content. Which was true at that time, Charith. Now I'm beginning to think it's not. It's about how strong that piece of content is, because people are not following pages, they're not following people. they're consuming content. So you can take your time and put out something really nice. Even our clients, we used to put out 2, 3, 4 pieces of content a day. But now I'm encouraging them, listen, even if you're putting out 1 piece of content a week, let's make it count. So that's really important for a brand in terms of the content. And then the third C is very important. This is one of the areas that I am personally focusing on, so I can definitely stand on it and put the money where my mouth is conversations. So you can have the best viral video, or you can do the best viral thing as a brand. People would just consume it as entertainment. Yeah. Recently, you would have seen there was a small, really nicely executed gimmick one of the brands did, where there was a CCTV footage and then they did a reveal. Now, I'm not a big believer that people are going to watch that and flock to their store to buy their product. I'm not a big believer of that. But if they leverage that viral content which got reach and attention and had conversational commerce and converted that to sales, that would have been effective. So, and through conversations almost only through conversations you can build a deeper relationship, and the deeper relationship is what matters. So those are the 3 C's I think that brands should follow after they identify and dissect their audience.
Now, talking about something now, catching from what you mentioned, something went viral and the conversations turned in an opportunity for companies to turn that into branding or marketing aspect. I would say now the most recent viral news was the Mrs. World pageant. What are your views about it, and how do you think brands should really make use of this opportunity?
Now my wife's watching this. So, what pageant? Just kidding. That's me trying to be funny. Right. So I think it relates to both the questions you asked me, one about personal branding, one about a brand being on digital. I would say don't do that, because if you're looking at that and thinking that's a good way of going viral, yeah, it doesn't build your brand in any way. It doesn't build your personal brand. It doesn't build your corporate brand. It doesn't have any positive connotation to it. Maybe you could be a certain type of individual. This is in no reference to the person, because that was just an incident. That has nothing to do with what I'm saying. In general, if you do a publicity stunt, I don't believe that was. If you do a publicity stunt, I don't think it really helps you unless if you're willing to get any sort of attention, not the right sort of attention. So again, going back to what I said, it's about building long-lasting, deep relationships through conversations, and people just not just looking at you and thinking, okay, I know you, but also wanting to be with you, wanting to be connected to you. And as a brand, the thing you should focus on, gentlemen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the biggest concentration should be on how do you make your customers your fans, and how do you convert your fans into customers. And I think the best way to do that is through conversational commerce.
I think one of the things you can also learn from that kind of thing, I think the apparel industry as of recent also had some exposure, so did the telco industry, is that, you know, as I said before, there is this element of things going out of control. It being uncontrolled. You cannot control everything. And in the days we live in, some incident doesn't need have to be on TV. It could be someone captured something on a phone in a far out remote place, and the ability for that to just suddenly become everyone's talking point is very real. So I think what marketers have to learn is when you do your plans, when you're looking at putting out stuff, when you have multiple platforms that consumers can engage with, you know, and they do memes and all kinds of stuff, it's out of your control. But you have to build this contingency of damage control. How do we reel this in the event that there are situations like this? What do you do? And if you don't have a plan in place and you don't react as quickly as you should, then things tend to escalate and snowball and becomes a bigger monster than it actually is. So that's something I think we can all learn from incidents like this, and build it into your campaigns, to your plans, and just as a corporate, I mean, all of us are in companies which have multiple platforms that you own on, and it's something that you have to do consciously, especially in this kind of day.
Yeah, why I specifically asked that question, jokes apart, anyway, we do not have anything against the people who engaged or anything, but this situation particularly I'm asking. Now we spoke about the COVID-19 crisis, that was a situation, but Sri Lankans have this tendency to move along with new trends and new waves, whereas it just lasts for like 2 weeks and then that fades away. Nobody can remember what really happened. Is it really right to move with these new trends, and then as soon as something like this happens, all the brands get into a marketing aspect and make use of that situation thinking it's a good opportunity? Surein, would you like to answer that?
I just happened to move my mic and she kind of picked on me.
I thought you wanted to answer that question.
But no, I do have an opinion there. I think it's a nasty tendency, and Sri Lanka has kind of gotten, at least Sri Lankan marketers, have actually gotten a bit of a reputation for jumping on this kind of bandwagon of either good news or bad news that's going along. And some of it, is not in good taste. Right? And personally, I think the tendency to do that is when you don't have a story yourself. Right? So you're trying to piggyback on something that is occurring out there and kind of add on your brand or your corporate or your story to what's going on. And you tend to do that because you don't have the channels, you don't have the outreach, and you don't have the story and the conversation ongoing with your customers or your fans. So therefore, you're trying to compromise and you're trying to make up something to be able to give you that reach. Right? So if as an organization you find yourself doing that, you need to take a step back and ask yourself some really fundamental questions saying, is my Marcom really effective enough? Right? And what is missing that I need to kind of leverage these opportunities, which are not guaranteed to happen. These things occur one day and then, they're kind of gone the next. Right? So Sri Lankans kind of, the short-term mentality also means that you have to, as an organization, determine, we talk about what are you humming about, what are you singing about, what are you shouting about, right? So what is your constant hum of messaging that you're putting out? When do you stop and actually sing something out there for more people, and what do you shout about? And if you don't have that strategy, you're kind of waiting for a situation to arise where you can piggyback up, and that is not good marketing.
Thank you for that opinion, Surein. Now, with that, we have actually come to the final segment of today's brand summit, where we're going to take questions. I'm going to pick few questions out of the questions that you all have sent us. So let me just first direct the question to Chetaka. We expect brief answers from the panelists for this session. So there is a person asking, this is regarding the category growth for beauty and personal care in Sri Lanka during the pandemic situation. What was the category growth like as a percentage? And what do you think were the key driving forces under the broader context of the pandemic that led to such a growth?
So I think in beauty and personal care, rather than talking about the numbers, I will kind of touch upon the growths. Predominantly, hygiene was a growth pillar for us in the beauty and personal care, which is skin cleansing, because it was harped on the fact that to counter the virus, it's important you wash your hands, you sanitize, etc. So more of skin cleansing and sanitizer related products were kind of growing, and even shampoos were growing because hygiene was the kind of key factor. Versus also we saw a little bit kind of a slowdown when it came to like the face creams, kind of the luxuries that people normally use on a day-to-day basis was kind of taking a back seat, whereas these kind of essentials where people kind of bought and kind of stacked, that was there. So this is how I think the beauty personal care was behaving during the pandemic period.
Thank you so much. And then we have a question to Subodha as well from the public. How do I start a social media campaign for my own business is a question we are getting. If you focus on startup.
Okay, startup. So I think, okay, it's a very broad question.
Step one, contact Subodha.
Actually, DM me on Instagram. I'll help you with that, whoever that person is. I would say understand who the audience is. Just quickly look at what your product is. at least try to figure out which channels would be the most appropriate. So right now, to give you an example, Instagram might be a must have. So get onto that platform, look at, if you don't have a lot of knowledge in how to do this, look at similar brands globally, understand how they have navigated through times, what they're doing right. Don't just look at the content to see if it's a beautiful piece of content, but just look at how the engagement is, who's really engaging with that content. Look at local brands. I think there's a lot of brands, even Unilever consumer brands, they have their own different segments that they target. Airtel targets a different segment. Look at them and look at their content and see what's really working, and then try to create content for your brand, which has the same sort of focus areas as some of them have done. I'm just answering this assuming you're just a very new startup and your expertise is perhaps in the startup and the business side or the tech or the product, but not in marketing. But if that person would like for me to help them, I'm more than happy to do on Instagram.
All right, with that, let me pick a question to Charith. Okay, we have one asking, how are you or do you intend to promote your SME product?
Well, specifically to Airtel, if I was to take that question, we do have SME as a segment for us. And again, we approach that in the sense of we understand who our audience is, and I think the general consumer will not be privy to that kind of communication because we choose a more direct, a B2B kind of a marketing approach, which is, I think the polar opposite of exposure and awareness model. It's a lot to do with direct sale and building a rapport and a trust, and also putting products out there that, again, different scales of organizations, different industries require different products. So it's about tailor-making your product to them and adopting a more personal selling kind of an approach in that sense.
Thank you, Charith. On a final note, I would like to pick a question to Surein. We have a person asking, how to improve the brand loyalty among the employees within the organization?
One of the things that I think lots of corporates struggle is to be able to, we as marketers, we typically are outward focused. We are talking about our consumers, our customers, and focusing on our external media, talking digital media. But as an organization, and I think marketers also have to begin to kind of look inward as well, because especially in B2B scenarios, you find that your brand ambassadors are your employees. And if they are not conversant in what your organization is, what they stand for, and the kind of values they represent, you are going to start suffering. And the key to that there are two things. So I talk about communication, yes, internal communication, yes, but also engagement. What do you do as an organization to constantly kind of make sure that, just like social media engagement, we talk about that as a metric, do you have metrics for how engaged your organization is within itself? We talk about the problems of work from home, and one of the downsides has been the fact that people are beginning to feel a little bit distant. Right? You're not connected, you don't have that camaraderie anymore, you don't meet for a cup of tea at the canteen. So how do you, in this current post-pandemic world, in any organizational setting, are you actively working to better engage your employees with a sense of purpose? Just as much as you have a brand purpose, you need an organizational purpose, so that people come to work already with the answer, why am I coming to work? Right? So that they're coming in there and they're actively working not just for stated purpose or stated kind of job descriptions, but they're looking for ways to constantly enhance the organizational value. So, you have lots of, how many times do you have somebody suggesting something as an improvement for the organization? And it's not just about the quality of food in your canteen or whatever, but real change makers out there who have the ability to kind of come to work and not just bring their bodies to work, but their minds to think on your behalf. And that becomes your brand loyalty.
Thank you so much for that answer. Yes.
Sorry, I just thought it might be helpful. I'll just share a quick thought. Especially in larger corporates, one of the biggest challenges you have now, I think that's what we've been talking about. We talk of consumers, but your employees are having the same behavior as the consumer. So they are not necessarily tuning into the normal channels. Even when they're at a meeting, they're on their phone, where it's allowed or where it's only just, where they could get away with it. So I think one of the, especially in larger corporates, and I think one of the things that could be done is that your C-level executives, your top management can have maybe a control, but a very outward social media presence, because even you can't be at every single meeting, There are staff in your organizations that might not hear you, talk to you, say hello to you, not even once in a year. So, but they could easily tune into perhaps your LinkedIn page. So corporate leaders, I think it's very important now that you inspire and you drive your teams and you put your face in front of your brand on at least one social media platform so that your troops can rally around you. I think that's very important now.
Thank you so much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we've actually come to the end of the Slim Brand Summit 2021, where we spoke a lot about the brand development, how it can affect the industries in different ways. And to talk about that, we had 4 spearheads in 4 different industries coming into play today. I think we achieved, not that I think we surely achieved the objective of today's summit, where the objective was to uplift the marketing profession in Sri Lanka through creating awareness on the field of branding. I think it was not just to spread the awareness, but our experts shared their experience, knowledge, insights, and their expertise was just up there. I think this was an interesting conversation, interesting panel discussion. So first of all, let me thank all the panelists who joined us today. Let me start with Senior Brand Manager, Lifebuoy Unilever, Mr. Chetaka Gunawardena. Thank you so much for joining with us. And then Head of Brand Strategy and Corporate Communications, Bharti, Airtel, Lanka, Mr. Charith De Chickera. Thank you so much. And CEO at 7 Media Group, Mr. Subodha Pilimatalawwe. Thank you, Subodha, for joining us. And Head of Corporate Communications and Branding, MAS Holdings, Mr. Surein Wijeyeratne.
Thank you.
Thank you to 4 of you for making this event a great success today. And thank you to everyone who joined us live as well. I'm sure you gained a lot from this valuable conversation today. So if you have any questions, you can direct it to the organizers, or if you want to get in touch with the experts, you can get in touch through social media. I'm sure they'll help you through your questions as well. So before we wind up, I would like to inform you about the Diploma in Strategic Brand Management program, which is being conducted by Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing. So to know more details about the Diploma in Strategic Brand Management, please call 071-979-8565 or 071-149-5116. Get in touch through these hotlines to know more details about the Diploma in Strategic Brand Management offered by Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing. Thank you so much for joining and making this a great success. We are winding up Slim Brand Summit 2021. Have a good evening.